Hey guys, I am back and we are going to keep reading Found by Margaret Peterson Haddix. The last time we read, Jonah and Chip and Catherine started to think that maybe Angela was right, not just about time travel, which they're starting to think, wow, even if it sounds crazy, it might be possible, but they also think Angela might have been right about how it's not safe to talk on the phone, because Jonah had written a note to his parents, just in case something bad happened to the library, and then the men had shown up there, and he thinks that it might be because they found the note, and all of the witness lists and the data on Chip's computer regarding what they took from Mr. Reardon's office was all completely wiped clean, gone without a trace, and that was also in Jonah's letter. So they think that anything written down or on a computer might be more easy to track even if there's time travel involved. So they are about to meet in person to see if they can figure out what to do next now that all of their information is gone. So we're going to pick back up with chapter 22. Jonah, Chip, and Catherine slumped in various chairs in Chip's basement. Is this safe? Catherine asked, talking together, here, now. I don't know, Jonah said miserably. How long do sound waves stay in the air? I can check online, Chip said. He turned around to the computer and began to type in, how long do... Chip, someone could check your search record, find out that you asked that question, Jonah objected. So what? I could just be doing some science homework, Chip said. But he stopped typing. The words, how long do, stayed on the computer screen. How long do we have to figure everything out, Jonah wondered. How long do we have before someone appears out of nowhere and carries us away? He'd finally told Chip and Catherine about seeing an intruder in his room, the night they'd first gotten the lists of witnesses and survivors. Then he'd explained his theory about how someone, the janitor's enemy, had found out about Chip's computer files from the note in Jonah's desk, and how if he, whoever he was, could find Jonah's note and Chip's computer files, then that person could just as easily tap their phones. For all Jonah knew, someone could have gone back in time to tap their phones 10 years ago, but was listening to their conversations 50 years in the future. Jonah was beginning to feel hopeless. How could he resist someone with that kind of power? All right, Catherine said briskly. Let's assume that talking is safe, because if it isn't, we can't do anything. Chip, do you have any paper? Catherine, I told you they can read anything we write down. Catherine rolled her eyes and reached down to pull a sheet of paper out of Chip's printer. She snagged a pen out of the middle of a stack of computer games and dodged Jonah's hands when he tried to pull the pen away from her. I know, she said impatiently. I'll destroy the evidence as soon as I'm done. I'll eat the paper if I have to, but we have to get organized. She bent over the computer desk and wrote two headings on top of her paper, what we know and what we think. She drew a line down the middle of the page, dividing the two topics. Under what we know, she wrote, JB gave us witnesses' survivors list. And then under what we think, she added, so JB's probably not the one who took them away. JB? Chip asked. Janitor boy, Catherine said. I would have called him CJB for cute janitor boy, but that's just my opinion, and probably not how you and Jonah think about him, so, Catherine, Jonah growled through gritted teeth. He pointed to the list. Focus. Catherine grinned triumphantly, not looking chastised at all. Dimly, Jonah realized she may have been trying to aggravate him, to jolt him out of his gloom. She shook her wet hair gleefully, sending out drops of water all over the paper. Wait a minute. Catherine had really agreed to come down here to Chip's without blow-drying her hair first? Jonah hadn't noticed that before because he'd been so freaked out. But this undoubtedly meant that Catherine didn't have a crush on Chip. Or if she did, she thought this mystery was more important. Jonah decided to apply his brainpower to Catherine's list instead of her love interests. JB was trying to protect us from E, she said, pointing to the what we know column, and E stands for enemy. Nobody argued with him. Okay, Catherine said after a pause, and wrote it down. We need another category, Chip said. What we don't know. Why was JB protecting us? What did E want to do with us? He pulled out another sheet and handed it to Catherine. None of them commented on the fact that what we don't know got a whole sheet of paper, while what we know and what we think got only half a sheet of paper. JB, trying to warn Jonah, went into the no category, but they all agreed that the phones are tapped only qualified for what we think. Angela vanished into thin air, Jonah said. No. He was glad Chip didn't challenge that one. Without asking, Catherine added into a time warp, and with our lists, under what we think. And then, under what we don't know, you can add about 1 billion questions, Chip said. How? Why? How did she know the time warp was there? How did she go through it today when she's been studying time travel for 13 years and hasn't gotten anywhere? Catherine chewed on her pen thoughtfully. I bet JB helped her, she said. But Jonah would have seen JB if he'd been there with her, Chip objected. Maybe he told her how the time warp worked, Catherine said, or maybe he was invisible. Invisible, Jonah thought. You've got to worry about invisible people too? Angela didn't look upset or anything, Jonah said. On the contrary, when he pictured her stepping into nothingness, reliving that moment he'd already relived so many times already, he thought she'd had an excited expression on her face, or determined. But maybe we should call her, just to make sure, and to see if she has our lists. Call her, Chip asked. 15 minutes ago, you wouldn't even talk to me on the phone. I know, but if we're careful about what we say, just kind of hint that we want to meet with her again, to find out what happened, to see if she has our lists. Hand me the cell phone, Catherine, Jonah said. Catherine took the phone out of her pocket and handed it over. We don't have her phone number anymore, remember? Chip said. I'll call information, Jonah said. He was already starting to punch in numbers. Catherine scrunched up her face, like she was thinking hard. She lives on Stonehenge, she said. Stonehenge Court or Street or something like that. I remember thinking that someone involved in a mystery should have a mysterious address like that. Thanks, Jonah said. To the operator, he said, I need the number for an Angela or A. Dupree on Stonehenge. Dupree, D-U-P-R-E. Thank you, the operator said. And then, a second later, I don't have a listing for any A or Angela Dupree anywhere in the city. But I know she's there, Jonah protested. Maybe her number's unlisted, the operator said, or she just uses a cell phone. Lots of people are doing that now, and they're not in the directory. It would be like Angela to have an unlisted number, Jonah thought. Thanks anyway, he said, and cut off the call. Chip and Catherine were staring, like they were worried about him now. It doesn't matter, Chip joked. She's probably not back from the time warp anyhow. Maybe, maybe not, Catherine said. You could go through a time warp and stay in the other time for 30 years, and then return just a split second after you left. I was watching a split second after she left, Jonah said grumpily. She didn't come back. Not being able to find Angela's number bothered him more than it should have. It was like he didn't have control over anything. Okay then, Catherine said with forced cheer. How about all that stuff Angela told us about the planes and the babies, and her theory about you two being from the future? That's all impossible, Chip said. Isn't it? And yet, they'd sort of begun treating it like it was real, like they believed it. Why would anyone come back from the future to now? Jonah asked. What's happening now that matters? And here, in Ohio. Yeah, Catherine said. If you're going to go back in time, you save Abraham Lincoln from being assassinated, or John F. Kennedy, or you keep the Titanic from sinking, or you stop 9/11, or, I know, you assassinate Hitler before he has the chance to start World War II. Or you bet on who's going to win the World Series, which you already know because, duh, you're from the future, Chip said. Or you invest in Microsoft stock before anyone's heard of Microsoft. Jonah shrugged. Maybe there's something big that's about to happen here that we don't know about, he said. He saw Catherine trying to suppress a shiver. What I don't get is why there are two sides fighting over us. He looked down at Catherine's list, which was full of JBs and Es. What do they want from us? And how can we find out before it's too late? Catherine asked. Chapter 23. They were stymied. For the next week, practically every day, one of them had a brainstorm. On Monday, Catherine thought of actually walking or riding their bikes to visit every single kid in Liston they remembered being on their list. But they couldn't remember very many street names, and the ones they remembered turned out to be way over on the other side of the highway, too far away. On Tuesday, Jonah thought of calling other Duprees to ask them if they knew Angela, and if so, if she was all right. JB and E already know that we know Angela, he argued with Chip and Catherine. They saw us talking to her. What could it hurt if they find out we're looking for her again? His arguments didn't matter. The only Dupree he could find from the directory assistants had just moved from Louisiana and had never heard of Angela. On Wednesday, Chip said, That's it. I'm calling Daniela McCarthy back. I don't care who hears me. But her phone rang and rang and rang, and then a computerized message clicked on. This phone has been disconnected. There was no other number given. Ah! Chip kicked his desk chair and sent it spiraling across the basement floor. They probably canceled their landline and went down to just cell phones during the move. That's what we did. Why didn't I call her back last week? He pounded his fists on the desk. On Thursday, Catherine thought of riding their bikes slowly down Robin's Egg Lane, looking for sale or sold signs, or, if they got really lucky, moving vans. They did find a McRoy Realty sign stuck in the yard at 1873, which sounded right to Chip and Jonah, but when they knocked on the door, the sound echoed vacantly. All the windows were covered with blinds, so they couldn't see in. A woman stepped out on the porch across the street. Nobody's going to buy your band's candy or raffle tickets or whatever it is you're trying to sell there, she said. That house has been empty for months, and while we're at it, I don't want to buy anything either. Oh, we're not selling anything, Catherine said quickly. Jonah jabbed his elbow into her ribs, because what if the woman jumped to a worse conclusion? What if she thought they were planning to break in? Catherine ignored him. We're just from the middle school welcome wagon, she said. We had information that a 13-year-old girl was moving in here, and we came to make sure she feels comfortable in Liston. Do we have our dates wrong? Do you know when the McCarthys are moving in? Well, I wouldn't know anything about that, the woman said. I do seem to remember hearing something about the paperwork on that house being messed up, delaying everything. But, of course, it's none of my business. She gave them a sharp look. Or yours. Friday afternoon, Jonah shoved aside his math homework and wrote on a clean sheet of paper. JB, we could use a little help here. Hints? Clues? Can't you tell us anything? Then, he tore the paper into pieces and threw it in the trash can beside his desk, because how would JB know that they called him JB? And what if E found the note instead? It was a good thing he destroyed the evidence so quickly, because a few moments later, his mom poked her head in the door. Jonah, I didn't want to bring this up in front of Catherine, but we got this flyer in the mail today. She held out a glossy sheet of paper. Halfway across the room, Jonah could read the title, Adoptees on the Cusp of Their Teen Years, a conference for adolescents and their parents. It's part of a series put on by the County Department of Social Services, she said. This conference is just for families in Liston and Clarksville and Upper Tyson, so it probably won't be a huge crowd. You've just been acting so disturbed lately, ever since we met with Mr. Reardon. Not that I blame you. I was disturbed by that man too. But even before that, you were asking questions about your adoption. All the books say the teen years are when a lot of adoptees begin struggling with their identities. I think we should go to this, you and Dad and me. Liston and Clarksville and Upper Tyson, Jonah thought. Perfect. Okay, Jonah said, trying very hard to hide his eagerness. He needed to sound reluctant, put upon, maybe even still disturbed. He tried to sound as if something new had just occurred to him, as if he didn't much care. Oh, could we make a copy of that? I think Chip and his parents might want to go too. Chapter 24. What if it's a trap? Catherine asked. How could it be a trap? Jonah asked. It's sponsored by the county. The two of them were rather listlessly playing basketball in the driveway. Mom had shooed them outside. Go, get some fresh air. You've both been so mopey lately. I don't think you're getting enough exercise. So they were standing under the hoop, but they kept forgetting to bounce the ball or to shoot it. Chip was at a dentist appointment, so they hadn't been able to share the news about the conference with him yet. The county, Catherine snorted, giving the ball a hard shove toward Chip. Yeah, and we got the list of survivors and witnesses from the FBI, which is also the government. How do you know that E didn't set this whole thing up? How do we know the government's not involved in everything, Jonah thought. How do we know they didn't help E tap our phones? How do we know that the time travelers, JB or E or both of them, can't manipulate the government however they want to? How do we know anything's safe? He didn't care anymore. He was going to the conference no matter what. He was sick of feeling stymied. What he said to Catherine was, I went back and looked at the county website. The conference has been on their schedule for more than a year. It would be hard to set that up as a trap. The county website? Catherine's eyes bugged out a little. So you left a trail on your computer? Don't worry, I went back in and cleared the browsing history, Jonah said. A kid at school showed me how to do that. He shot the ball with exaggerated swagger, false confidence. The ball sailed through the hoop, but Jonah had the feeling that it could have just as easily have bounced off. Just like the conference could be a trap. I don't like it, Catherine said, grabbing the rebound. It just seems too convenient that it's for Liston and Clarksville and Upper Tyson, and those are the same places where all the kids on the survivors list moved. But it will be the perfect opportunity to talk to some of the kids from the list. I'm sure at least some of them will be there. You do remember the names, don't you? Jonah said. Sure, Catherine said. Andrea Crowell, Haley Rivers, Michael Kostoff. She began bouncing the ball in time with the names. Sarah Pergini, Josh Hart, Rusty DeVoral, Anthony Solbers. The ball landed on her foot and began rolling down the driveway. She waited while Jonah chased the ball out into the street. Chip probably remembers the other names, or we'd remember them if we heard them. Wait a minute, Jonah said, running back. He bounced the ball back to Catherine, a little harder than necessary. What do you mean, we? Catherine took a shot. The ball swished cleanly through the net. She didn't even look surprised. I mean, I'm going to, of course, she said, grabbing her own rebound and holding on to it. You and Chip will have to pretend to be paying attention to, what are some of the sessions called? Identity issues for teen adoptees or whatever. So you'll need me there, too, to get a chance to talk to all the other kids. Jonah didn't want to admit it, but what she said made sense. How are we going to explain this to Mom and Dad? Easy, Catherine said. She bounced the ball without looking at it. You tell them you want me to come. Jonah tried to steal the ball from her, but she saw him coming and jerked it out of reach. Now, how am I going to get them to believe that? Jonah asked. You'll figure something out, Catherine said. She smiled sweetly. That librarian thought you were a great actor. When Jonah went back into the house, he saw that Mom had already written 9 to 3 adoption conference on October 28th on the kitchen calendar. Quickly, he grabbed a pen and began inking over the words. He hadn't thought he'd have to worry about Mom and Dad's writing something that JB or E might see. Mom came around the corner just as he'd managed to obliterate the last E of conference. Jonah, what are you doing? She said, startled. I just started doodling, Jonah said. Guess it got a little out of hand. Mom looked completely bewildered. Even when you were a toddler, you didn't do things like that, she said. Mom, duh, Catherine said from across the kitchen, where she was pulling a Gatorade bottle from the refrigerator. Both Jonah and Mom turned to look at her. Somehow, Catherine managed to roll her eyes and gulp down Gatorade at the same time. She lowered the bottle. Think about it. If Jonah's suddenly all confused and worried about his identity, the last thing he needs is to have you write adoption conference in a public place like that. This isn't a public place, Mom said. It's our kitchen. Yeah, but Rachel and Molly are in here all the time, and Chip and all Jonah's other friends, and my other friends, and your friends, and Dad's friends. Catherine made it sound like thousands of people troop through their kitchen every day. There's nothing wrong with the word adoption, Mom said defensively, or with being adopted. Yeah, but Jonah doesn't want it advertised, Catherine said. Show some sensitivity. Jeez. Mom turned her gaze from Catherine to Jonah and back again. I really thought Jonah was capable of speaking for himself, Mom said, suspicion creeping into her voice. Oh, he is, Catherine said sweetly. Jonah, didn't you have something you wanted to ask Mom about the conference? Jonah shot Catherine a look that very clearly said, I'm gonna kill you when this is all over. To Mom, he said, yeah, I was just thinking that since Catherine seems to be having so many issues with not being adopted, maybe she could go to the conference too, so she could find out what horrors she avoided by getting birth parents who were crazy enough to want to keep her. Oh, Jonah, that's not the way to look at this, Mom protested. At the same time, Catherine said, oh, could I go to the conference with you? That would be great. Mom squinted at Jonah. Are you serious? She asked. It was really hard for Jonah to keep a straight face as he assured her. Yep, Catherine wants to go to the conference, and I want her to go too. Could I please? Catherine begged. Mom frowned. Some days I can't figure the two of you out at all, she said. Behind Mom's back, Catherine jerked her head at Jonah as if to say, your turn, close the deal. So, can she come to the conference with us? Jonah asked, trying to keep his eyes wide, his expression innocent. I suppose, Mom said, though I really don't understand why either of you wants this. Catherine threw her arms around Mom's shoulders. Thanks, Mom, she said. Just think, next year I'll be a teenager too, and then we'll really confuse you. Alright, and that is where we're going to stop for today. Hopefully in the next chapter tomorrow we will get to hear what happens at the adoption conference. Bye, guys.